I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Tonight we continue with the Psychick Bible, the apocryphal scriptures of Genesis P-Orridge, and the third mind of the Temple of Psychic Youth. Section 123, Pandrogeny, Part 14. Breaking sex. It seems useful to us in our practice to adopt the assumption that there is no way of knowing which has the supremacy, the recording device that is DNA, or the self we converse with internally, that we call consciousness, but often rather lazily, still imagine and identify as a living biological body. In fact, we see the eye of our consciousness as a fictional assembly or collage that resides in the environment of the body. One of the central themes of our work is the malleability of physical and behavioral identity. The body is used by the mind as a logo, a hieroglyph for the self, before we are able to speak and use language. It is almost a holographic doll constructed by external expectations, even before our body is born. Even the name we are assigned is another holographic program in the prophetic story of who we are to become. The work of William S. Burroughs and Brian Gysin has been highly influential to us, particularly in relation to the practice of the cut-up. To liberate the word from linearity, they began to cut up and incorporate random chants, reassembled both their own and co-opted literature to see what it really says, quote-unquote. They referred to the phenomena of profound and poetic new collisions and meanings that resulted from their intimate collaborations as the third mind. This was produced with a willingness to sacrifice their own separate, previously inviolate works and artistic, quote-unquote, ownership. In many ways, they saw the third mind as an entity in and of itself, something other, closer to a purity of essence, and the origin and source of a magical or divine creativity that could only result from the unconditional integration of two sources. Beginning in the 1960s, especially from being an active participant in the exploding gallery/transmedia exploration, and occasionally the gay lib street theater, Genesis P-Orridge experimented with various disciplines and practices to apply the cut-up to behavior, to identity, and to gender, deconditioning as far as possible the fictional character written by consensus reality in all who would impose their expectation upon him. P-Orridge worked throughout the 1970s as a performance artist and actionist, and during the 1980s, he studied and practiced ritual and shamanic techniques and was deeply involved in the body modification movement known as modern primitives. In the early 1990s, Genesis P-Orridge met Lady J. P-Orridge, and their even more rigorous collaboration began. Just as Burroughs and Gysin collaborated together, subsuming their separate works' individuality and ego to a collaborative process by cutting up the word to produce a third mind, so in our current practice, P-Orridge have applied the cut-up system and third mind concept directly to a central concern, the fictional self. The unauthorized astery of our lives so far. P-Orridge both supply our separate bodies, individuality, and ego to an ongoing and substantially irreversible process of cutting up identity to produce a third being, another entity that we call the Pandrogeny. In our quest to create the Pandrogeny, both Genesis and Lady J have agreed to use various modern medical techniques to try and look as much like each other as possible. We are required over and over again by our process of literally cutting up our bodies to create a third, conceptually more precise body, to let go of a lifetime's attachment to the physical logo that we visualize automatically as I in our internal dialogue with the self. We encounter many unexpected internal conflicts as our egos try to survive intact as the person they have been previously conditioned to accept, without question, and then be. We have discovered that how we look does relate very directly to the internal dialogue that describes us to ourself and to each other. This is not superficial in its effect when we suddenly instruct our mind to realize that everything about this logo of ourself is malleable, vulnerable, and impermanent. When you consider transsexuality, cross-dressing, cosmetic surgery, piercing, and tattooing, they are all calculated impulses, a symptomatic groping towards the next phase. One of the great things about human beings is that they impulsively and intuitively express what is inevitably next in the evolution of culture and our species. It is the other that we are destined to become. Pandrogeny is not about defining differences, but about creating similarities, not about separation, but about unification and resolution. P-Orridge believed that the binary systems embedded in society, culture, and biology are the root cause of conflict and aggression, which in turn justify and maintain oppressive control systems and divisive hierarchies. Dualistic societies have become so fundamentally inert, uncontrollably consuming, and self-perpetuating that they threaten the continued existence of our species and the pragmatic beauty of infinite diversity of expression. In this context, the journey represented by their Pandrogeny and the experimental creation of a third form of gender-neutral living being is concerned with nothing less than strategies dedicated to the survival of the species. We Are But One becomes less about individual gnosis and more about the unfolding of an entirely new, open-source, 21st century myth of creation. Change the way to perceive and change all memory. Lady J. P-Orridge and Genesis P-Orridge, New York, 2003. And there's a section break. Psychick TV/PTV3 statement regarding transgender rights at the proposed venue Anderson's in Arizona. When PTV3 was booked to play at Tom Anderson's club on Monday, 27th August 2007, we were completely unaware of the ongoing civil rights issues and the local controversy surrounding the club owner's victimization of transgender persons. As our tour has progressed, we began receiving email messages from the promoters expressing concerns about the continued viability of the venue under these volatile circumstances. Due to the wonders of MySpace technology, we also received haunting pleas and disturbing inquiries from gay, lesbian, and transgender activists and individuals. They asked us to consider canceling our concert rather than appear to endorse Tom Anderson and company's actions, albeit by default. We heard that due to some complaints by unidentified biological women concerning the use of the women's bathrooms at the club by transgender and transvestite persons, the women's bathrooms could be guarded by security to prevent further nonspecific gender use. There's a real difference between both those communities that is often overlooked. Transgender people absolutely commit their lives and physical bodies to becoming the opposite gender identity to that which the DNA supplied them at birth. This is often at great personal cost and sacrifice. They often are ostracized by family, friends, workmates, and their local community. No person changes gender identity lightly, and all in an enlightened democracy must honor the courage of our brothers and sisters in the transgender community. No transgender person identifying as female would ever stand up to P, which seems to be the problem at the heart of this issue locally. Transvestites choose to temporarily dress as the opposite gender, and whilst in this instance, female persona, will consider themselves temporarily female. Whilst it may well be possible that certain transvestites were standing to pee, one must consider the alternatives. Transgender women cannot use male bathrooms without genuine fear of harassment, ridicule, humiliation, and violence. Our culture is constructed upon prehistoric behavior patterns that originate in male-dominated cave clans, where survival was imperative and rested upon attacking anything different outside their experience or just plain other. The unknown was always considered a threat and was always intimidated and usually attacked. 40,000 years later, it is time for us to become mature and communally remove these reactive imprinted behaviors from our culture or be damned. As the lead vocalist of Psychick TV, I am perceived as transgender, and I am proud to be. I am perceived and assumed to be female, even officially, by the club, yet I was informed that not only would I be forced to use a separate bathroom from other women, including my female spouse of 14 years, but also there would be guards policing the use of these segregated stalls. What exactly is the club afraid of? If the question is hygiene, then I suggest an honor system based upon polite notices requesting all people perceiving themselves as women respect all varieties of women using the facilities by sitting to pee. And if anyone out there is under the illusion that women's bathrooms are innately more sterile and clean, think again. Since becoming female, I have been amazed at the level of pornographic graffiti in women's stalls and the equality of spillage and mess generated by both sexes. The issue of transgender rights regarding public bathrooms is a national one. During my transition, I was threatened with arrest at JFK Airport in New York for following the letter of the law and trying to use the men's bathroom. But to use the women's bathroom, which is what the security insisted I did, was at the time illegal. So where exactly do you believe our community should pee? Are we less than citizens, like the slaves of not so long ago, and witnessing a return to a new form of segregation, gender segregation? This is why Tom Anderson's solution is and was always unacceptable. First, he banned 2 entire communities for living out their constitutional rights to self-determined identity. Then he proposed police segregation. In many states in the USA, it is illegal for transgender persons who are female to use any woman's public bathrooms. Exactly where do these people controlled by fear of the new expect us to go? In the street? Behind trees? Under cars? Whilst it may seem ludicrous to those of you who have not had the precious gift of living within both gender communities during your lives, the constant threat of official and community discrimination is a very real issue of quality of life and democratic rights. Psychick TV received information that protests were to be held outside the club if we played. For myself, the position I was put in by Tom Anderson's various actions and his courting of the media to short-circuit civil liberties was intolerable. I see myself as incredibly fortunate in having a platform through Psychick TV/PTV3 to discuss issues, spread pandrogeny, positive androgyny, messages to our fan base, and through interviews to you, the media, and the public you serve. I have suffered from doctors refusing to treat me when I was in danger of dying within 3 days because I was transgender. I've been threatened, attacked, omitted from events and gatherings because of close family. Yet I count myself blessed to have been so accepted by our sisters and brothers in the transgender communities. We felt as a band we simply could not be seen to endorse Tom Anderson's policies by appearing at his club, despite his offer to treat me as an exception. It would be an unforgivable betrayal of so many people's trust in my integrity of spirit. With protests threatened and guards policing the situation, the possibility of feelings naturally running high could have led to somebody being hurt, injured, or property damaged, maybe even arrests of those of us inflamed by righteous indignation over this attempt to legitimize turning us into a marginalized sector of second-class citizens with fewer legal rights than biologically heterosexual members of this society and culture. For this reason, and because we truly do want our transgender brethren to enjoy our performance and be with us in a friendly, joyous, and pleasurable, safe, temporary, creative environment, we as a band have chosen to move our concert away from Tom Anderson's club and will now perform at the Sets in Tempe, Arizona on Monday, the 27th, August 2007. Please inform your friends, readers, and viewers of this change on your behalf in protest against the encroachment upon transgender civil liberties. Remember, you've got to fight for your right to pee-pee. Pee where thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thank you for your time and attention. Kari Saluti, Genesis P-Orridge of Psychick TV PT3. Genesis P-Orridge, Scottsdale, Arizona, 25th of August, 2007. Prayers for Sacred Hearts. Prayers for Pandrogeny and Breaking Sex. There is no reason on earth why you should run out of people to be. S/he is her/e. P androgyny, positive androgyny, power androgyny, potent androgyny, political androgyny, perfect androgyny, precious androgyny, P androgyne, wild being, unholy, chosen one, to throw off the shackles of experience of true sexual freedom and physical love. End gender, break sex. There are more than one of you, maybe hundreds to choose from. Never before has a generation felt such a rage to live. Destroy gender, destroy the control of DNA and the expected. In the beginning, all were perfect. The first man was the first woman, and the first woman was the first man, until the whispering began. Every man and woman is a man and woman. We are ultra-genetic terrorists. One man is another man or woman. One man's man is another man's woman. Change the way to perceive, and change all memory. Stop it. Stop being possessed by characters written by others. Rebuild yourself from the found up. Genesis and Lady J. Breyer P-Orridge, 2004. That completes part 14, Pandrogeny. Moving on, the last chapter of the original script to the Psychic Bible, part 15, the reading list. Original reading list, grade 23/1 receptor frequency. It is hoped that the finding is as important a discipline as the reading. Primary information reception. The View Over Atlantis by John Michel. The Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscroft. Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Lee Lincoln and Bygent. UFOs, Operation Trojan Horse by John A. Keel. Uptight by Victor Bokris. A Pook is Here by William S. Burroughs. The Outsider, The Occult by Colin Wilson. Popism by Andy Warhol. Images and Oracles of Austin Osman Spare by Kenneth Grant. The Illuminatus Trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. The Decorated Body by Robert Shea. Britain, an Unfree Country by Terence de Quesne. The Morning of the Magicians, Louis Powells and Jacques Bergier. The Aquarian Conspiracy, Marilyn Ferguson. Dancing Ledge, Derek Jarman. Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. Unspeakable Confessions by Salvador Dali and Andre Perrineau. The Tempest by William Shakespeare. The Great Beast by Jean Simons. Creative Dreaming by Patricia Garfield. Supernature by Lyle Watson. Here to Go, Planet R101 by Brian Gyson. Bomb Culture by Jeff Nuttall. Ratio 3 Transmediators by Zev, Andrew Mackenzie, and Genesis P-Orridge. Nothing is True, Everything is Permitted, The Life of Brian Gyson by John Geiger. Brian Gyson, Tuning into the Multimedia Age by Jose Ferez Curry. Agora, At the Left Hand of God by Robert E. Svoboda. Secondary Information Reception. The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, Alan Watts. The Golden Bough by J.G. Frazier. Real Time by John Brockman and Ed Rosenfield. The Secret of Meditation by Hans Ulrich Reicher. Play Power by Richard Nelville. The Master Game by Robert S. DeRupp. Zen Training by Katsuki Sakita. Cults of Unreason, Christopher Evans. The Sonnets of William Shakespeare. Nietzsche, Philosopher, Psychologist, Antichrist by Walter Kaufman. Minutes to Go, William S. Burroughs, Gregory Corso, Sinclair Bells, Brian Gyson. The Process, Brian Gyson. Future Ritual by Philip H. Farber. Brian Gyson, Let the Mice In. Brian Gyson, William S. Burroughs, and Ian Somerville. Exterminator by William S. Burroughs. Beat Hotel by Barry Miles. The Job, Interviews with William S. Burroughs by Daniel Odier. Painful but Fabulous, Genesis P-Orridge. Chapel of Extreme Experience, John Geiger. Radium 226.05 Magazine, Spring 1986, by Ulrich Hillebrand and Gum von Hauswolf. Back in No Time, The Brian Gyson Reader, by Jason Weiss. Siberia, Media Virus, by Douglas Rushkoff. The Holographic Universe, by Michael Talbot. The Third Mind, by William S. Burroughs and Brian Gyson. The Best of Olympia, by Maurice Gerodius. The Last Museum, by Brian Gyson. Records of Civilization, by Simon Ford. RE/Search number 5/6. William S. Burroughs, Brian Gyson, Throbbing Gristle. V. Vale. Flickers of the Dream Machine, by Paul Cecil. Disinformation, The Interviews, by Richard Metzger. Sex and Rockets, The Occult World of Jack Parsons, by John Carter. Breakthrough, An Amazing Experiment in Electronic Communication with the Dead, Konstantin Rodive. The Final Academy, Statements of a Kind, by Genesis P-Orridge and Richard Ellie. This is the Salvation Army, by Scott Trelevin. Portable Darkness, An Aleister Crowley Reader, by Scott Michelson. The Soul's Code, In Search of Character and Calling, by James Hillman. Naked Lens, Beat Cinema, by Jack Sargent. Apocalypse Culture 1 and 2, by Adam Parfrey. Rapid Eye number 2, by Simon Dwyer. Rebels and Devils, The Psychology of Liberation, by Christopher Hyatt. The Lucifer Principle, The Global Brain, by Howard Bloom. Ultraculture, Generation Hex, by Jason Louv. Exploding Galaxies, The Art of David Medalla, by Guy Brett. Dolphins, Angels, and Extraterrestrials, by Timothy Wiley. The Correct Sadist, by Terrence Sellers. La Bosse, J.K. Huysmans. Our Lady of the Flowers, by Jean Genet. On the Road, The Original Scroll, Jack Kerouac. Groovy Bob, by Harriet Viner. Note to the reader of this book. In the 1960s, most of the books that changed the course of my life were incredibly difficult to find. There was no alternative distribution, and Henry Miller, Burroughs, and Jean Genet were often only to be found in Soho porn shops, stocked only because they had been prosecuted for obscenity. Many books on this list will also be hard to find despite the internet. Knowledge hard won is often more easily recalled and valued. Good luck searching, and don't forget, this is an ever-opening system, so add your own useful books to this list as you go, ready for a next generation. Thus concludes Part 15, the reading list, the last chapter of the Psychic Bible, the apocryphal scriptures of Genesis P-Orridge, and the third mind of the Temple of Psychic Youth. I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and I've enjoyed reading this for you. That is the official conclusion of the book. However, there is an extra part in the edition I got, which is the addenda to the second edition of the Psychic Bible. In the next 4 days, I will be reading that. I look forward to us meeting again.